Okay. Give me about 5 more minutes.
All right, welcome back, guys. We're talking about comedies, and good lord.
Wow, you're hot.
Hello. Welcome back. We're talking about comedies.
Scared. Oh
and,
my gosh,
we're
he's so scared.
We want to start over?
Nah.
Okay.
Well, I mean, we'll cut it out anyway.
We've got 2 takes.
Welcome back to this podcast, and not for you. My name is Wes.
Flat as hell.
My name is Jake.
I'm going to it this time. You guys are just going to have to sit there.
And this podcast is not for
Dang.
you. He said I'm going to it.
My name is Lorenzo Puddles.
Oh, okay.
Well, welcome back. If you've been listening, you know we're talking comedies. We're talking about comedy today. And we're good.
Audio exclusive footage.
Buy our mugs.
R-E-R-E-R-E.
Oh, man. Have you guys seen a good comedy lately?
Wow. We are talking about comedies. The original origins of this episode, the original title was called "Why Do Comedies Suck Now?"
So great.
Still going.
What?
The original title of this episode was "Why Do Comedies Suck Now?" But as I was writing it, I started thinking more about comedies in general, and we thought we would be a bit more specific and also maybe a little bit less negative, because there is good comedy out there, but I think we're seeing a very specific type of comedy a lot, and it's not good. So that's kind of what spawned the episode, kind of mainly the Judd Apatow inspired kind of raunchy comedy thing that is very popular. So I thought it would be more interesting to talk about the idea of comedy in both television and movies, because I think you could make an argument it might work better in one more than the other. And I don't know necessarily where I fall on this yet, but I thought it'd be an interesting idea to discuss. But one thing that I think is kind of interesting to talk about at the outset, maybe the reason we feel like comedies suck right now is because so many people have radically different senses of humor. And
True.
And that, I think, is apparent in movies. Do we think that...
I think it's this is a sentence that's going to sound weird. I think it is objectively the most subjective genre of media anywhere. I think what is funny to you is more specific than... I think movies can be objectively... Like a drama could be objectively good.
Right.
I think comedy is completely subjective. I think
it's almost entirely based on whether or not it makes you laugh, which is involuntary.
Yeah, it's just a response, right? So I agree. I think it's the hardest thing to say. That is definitely funny,
right?
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
So yeah, is it that? Do we think maybe like the current movie trends just don't match up with our sense of humor, or are they like objectively bad? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think it's the trend, I think, in that isn't always a bad word. You know, I know people like, it's so trendy, it means that people hate it, but I don't think that's always a bad thing. But the best example I can think of, and we'll talk about it later, but the best example I can think of is Hot Rod versus Pop Star Never Stop, Never Stopping, and the difference in those comedies.
Right.
Same group, same troupe, same crew, everything, right? Couple different, more stars in the second one, obviously. And the humor is just different.
Yeah.
And personally, I didn't like Pop Star as much because it's raunchier, it's more explicit, it's, you know, and it seemed like it would be more accessible.
It's a bit more broad as well.
Yeah, yeah. But I think that's a great example of the trend. You had the Judd Apatow explosion in the late 2000s, and that's sort of, I mean, Hangover made a bunch of money.
Yeah,
it was crazy, and so.
But the thing is, some of those Judd Apatow comedies we would not categorize as bad. The early ones.
I agree. Yes, and so they made Popstar in the midst of that big run of like movies kind of like that, and
I mean, he produced that.
And so the trend is sort of, it's changed in the last 15 to 20 years. And I know most people say that, which that's just because trends do change. Mm-hmm. So
I'd also zoom out even further than that. I would say in the 80s, you had a big explosion of comedies.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And it goes in waves, like you said.
Yeah.
I think it ebbs and flows more than people like can realize, because you're really only in, maybe we'll only see one more peak of maybe in our lifetime. I don't know, because I mean that's how a lot of the earliest motion pictures started were comedies, because that's what
Charlie
gets
Chaplin
across. Charlie Chaplin, Three Stooges,
Groucho
like
Marx.
That kind of thing was at the very forefront of movies.
Yeah.
And then dramas came in the 20s and like got more serious.
It's easier to
noir,
do comedy with no dialogue than it was to do dramas.
Right. And I'm not saying that that's like, it just ebbs and flows.
Yeah.
Like they were huge and then they've,
your
gone
point
down.
about the 80s is interesting. It makes me think.
Hold on real quick before you talk about it. Don't forget. Curtis Ware, did you hear we're talking about movies before 2000? So
shout out to Curtis Ware and movies
he
before.
was at the bowling alley last week, and he's like, hey, you guys know that movies before 2000 are a thing, right? I was like, ouch. Nice. So yeah, perfect.
Wow.
Curtis, check it out. Wes is going to talk about the 80s.
Oh, no. It's fine.
He's late for an appointment.
Go for it.
Oh, no.
The 80s have all of those
The wacky comedy
original
came out.
Well, all of those original SNL guys started making movies in the 80s.
Yep.
And you got the Chevy Chase movies, you got Dan Aykroyd, Bill Murray, all of those guys.
It's the guy's name that made the Chicago-based
John Hughes
movies.
Yeah. So you've got a big explosion of comedies that were like mass appeal comedies in the 80s.
Right.
And then I feel like in the 90s, you got stuff that was more like specific.
Indie.
Like Dumb and Dumber a lot of people obviously find Dumb and Dumber to be hilarious. I think it's more specific than
Fletch.
Yeah. Like
Airplane.
It's such a specific kind of humor that's so, it's like smart, stupid, which wasn't really a thing in 80s comedies. You know what I mean? And so same with like Ace Ventura. Like the Jim Carrey style comedies in the 90s became much more specific. And I think you got very like kind of niche comedies in the 90s.
Yeah,
and
it's
then
not Animal House. It's more specific,
And then in the 90s you get, or in the 2000s you start to get more broad comedies again with things like Superbad and stuff like that. Yeah. Even though I would say Superbad is a bit, it kind of, that and Hangover kind of launched that whole, and 40-Year-Old Virgin, stuff like that.
Sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's interesting. I hadn't thought about that until you mentioned that the 80s were a big decade.
Yeah, I mean, I think you can't talk about
comedies.
like feature-length films without talking about SNL, because it was so influential, and those groups of people worked on all of those comedies basically that came out at the same time.
Yeah.
So I'm sure there was a boom in the 60s or 50s too that we're not really privy to as much, but
the golden era of Adam Sandler comedies were probably 90s too, right?
Yeah, and that's
a little bit of
late
early
90s,
2000s.
and that's more specific humor.
That's
again.
about as specific as you can get. A water boy on a high school football team.
Yeah.
I mean, like things like Napoleon Dynamite too. And
But there's like people that I don't find Adam Sandler to be funny.
Yeah.
And I think for the most part, people find Bill Murray to be funny. I don't know. There might be some people that don't, obviously, because it's not universal.
Yeah.
But like those guys from the early SNL days were pretty much universally liked as comedians. But maybe we're in the minority with Adam Sandler because he makes.
I think he's funny.
A bunch
I think
of
the
money.
golden era of Adam Sandler is funny.
I would assume that most people like Adam Sandler.
Yeah.
For most people that I know like Adam Sandler.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, it's sort of like Will Ferrell, right? I mean, most people think he just does comedy. It's like I mean, Uncut Gems was great.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Punch Drunk Love.
I think Adam
So he
Sandler's
does
a
more
great
than that,
actor. Like,
but-
I think he's actually talented.
Yeah.
I think in recent years he's
Yes, and we'll talk about that later for sure.
he's kind of
But
gotten into a little bit of a sellout
Netflix
mode.
money.
Yeah. Red Letter Media has a bunch of episodes about the
All of
whole
his-
Adam
yeah.
Sandler like cabal of just like
Just gonna get David Spade and
just fleecing Netflix for money.
Yeah.
And just giving it to his friends.
Yeah.
yeah.
But
Rob Schneider is a stapler.
anyways, so yeah, do we just feel like currently movie trends just don't line up with what we like in comedies, or do you feel like and we can talk about this too, it's hard to say. The thing we kind of came across coming up with this episode is there's comedies now that are a mixture of comedy and something else.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like there's a lot of dramedies.
It's a blend. Yeah. Should we do another clap so you can sync this to the audio? Would that
Sure.
be helpful? I didn't think about that the last time but and then we'll cut this out in audio and whatever.
Yeah.
And we're back.
And we're back. Right now there's a lot of comedies that are not just a comedy,
Yeah.
but there's also comedies that are just a comedy. And I think that those are the ones we're talking about when we say comedies suck. Like comedy movies suck. The ones that are just a comedy
Yeah.
and they're branded as a comedy is like, this movie's hilarious, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
That's the stuff that we are talking about, I think, whenever we say we feel like comedy movies suck.
Yeah,
you know?
and it's interesting why. I'd have to look at the box office numbers of all these ones that are coming to mind. I just went in descending order, like The War with Grandpa with Robert De Niro, or Murder Mystery, which is just one of Adam Sandler's Netflix.
Yeah.
It's like Netflix comedy specials. I mean, not a stand-up, but it's like that's kind of what it is. There's a new Adam Sandler Netflix movie coming out this year. It's like, okay, whatever. Long Shot with Seth Rogen and Charlize Theron. Tag with Ed Helms and John Hamm. Game Night with Jason Bateman. Blockers, Seth Rogen. Holmes and Watson. Will Ferrell and John C. Reilly. Super Troopers 2. Dumb and Dumber 2. So those sort of ones are like... I'd have to look at the numbers on them. I assume they flopped, especially when you have star power like that. But it is interesting because they're dramedy. So like another one of my favorites that I didn't put on there is like The Big Short. It's like that's hilarious.
Yeah.
But it's about the financial crisis.
But is it a yeah.
Exactly. And so it's like I don't think I would classify it as a comedy, but maybe that just cements the fact that comedy's so subjective that on its own it's so hard to do.
Yeah.
Most filmmakers are like, I would love like to make these jokes in this world, but that's not going to be enough to put butts in seats, sell tickets, get a well-reviewed movie, that kind of thing. So
I mean, if you look back at we can go back to the 80s, but if you look at like the big comedies from that era, they still have some stuff to them, but it is mostly like gags and bits.
Yeah, and I don't mean substance, right? I just mean like
a drama.
Yeah.
So yeah, you think about like the big ones that come to mind are Animal House, Blues Brothers. Even though that has kind of something else going on, it's sort of a musical as well. Spinal Tap.
It's a mockumentary, I suppose. So it's a little different. It's a comedy.
And Groundhog Day, Ghostbusters, like all of those movies are just comedies, and they have other stuff going on in them that makes
Trains. It's a holiday movie, but it's just a comedy.
Yeah,
but all the John Hughes ones, 16 Candles,
Tommy
all that
Boy.
stuff. They're just comedies. They have a plot, they have emotional moments with a character, but nothing where it's like, wow, that's heavy. You know what I mean?
Like, it even gets more muddled because I think even more recently, I feel like the action comedy has become a thing, which is a very strange. I think it's the strangest one, but those have been coming out even more. I think than like this one is hilarious. Like it's just straight up comedy. Ones that are just raunch.
Yeah,
I feel like the action thing has been slid in there to a lot of movies.
Yeah.
Like
The Bodyguard's wife,
the
Hitman's
absurdist
Bodyguard.
comedy, sort of,
yeah.
like-
It's like
yeah.
It's
Red Notice.
It's the
that
scene
just came out.
Yeah.
The scene that immediately comes to mind is like all this crazy stuff is happening. They're all like breathing heavily and holding guns, and then they're doing a bit with each other in the middle of it.
Yeah.
Like, what are you doing? Like that kind of thing is exactly what comes to mind when you say that action comedy, and all of them have that moment.
Yes.
You know?
Yes.
Yeah.
And then someone gets kicked in the face or
Right.
something.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's the other thing that's weird is they're so cookie cutter
Right.
at the same time.
Yeah.
Like you look at the 80s comedies, the ones I listed are radically different from each other too.
Yeah. Right.
Like Groundhog Day and Ghostbusters, while both starring Bill Murray and both being pure
What about
comedies,
Bob? Put that one right in the middle.
Yeah.
are all completely different from each other, but they're still pure comedies. So kind of moving along, do we feel like there's been a decrease in the quality of comedy films, or have the numbers decreased, or like you were saying, do we feel like they've just blended into other stuff for the most part, and what's left behind in the comedy genre is just the most broad stuff?
Well, what do you want to address first? You asked a lot of questions.
Yeah, I did.
I can answer both with one, because I think it's mainly the numbers decreasing. I think it's mainly pure comedies. There used to be in the early 2000s, 80s, whatever big era you want to talk about, you had, I don't know, probably 10 or 15 big ones coming out a year, something like that. And I feel like we're getting one or two, maybe.
Yeah.
Where it's like, I'm talking Blockbuster Comedy.
Mm-hmm.
Those don't exist anymore at all. I mean, hardly ever do you see. No one. I mean, how many people were in Jackass when you went to see it?
4.
And I mean, I realize that's the 5th movie or whatever they've made.
Yeah.
But I mean, there's no like lining around the block for.
And that's also
comedy.
a thing that already existed.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's not
an IP.
It's
Right.
And
But I'm saying that those ideas, the big blockbuster ideas that would have been there in 2002, are in independent film now. That's where they're getting their release. They're like,
or they're going straight to
Art
Netflix.
of Self-Defense. You're talking like the specific stuff.
Yeah.
Is all super independent.
Well-
Lady Bird and like.
Well, yeah, along those lines, this is what you brought up before. Is like you feel like the comedy genre has moved into dramedy,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
the best comedies are not just pure
Yeah.
comedies.
I guess in that sense, I would say also that the numbers have decreased too.
Yeah.
Normally, I would have said that they haven't. It's just what we have left is terrible.
Right.
But in that sense, I guess pure comedies, then yes, they probably have decreased in numbers because maybe the filmmakers in this era that are taking, I'm not saying taking it seriously in a pretentious way, but it's like maybe they care about the character arc, or maybe they care about shot composition, maybe they care about the sound design. Those filmmakers are probably just making dramedies,
Yeah.
you know, or the horror comedy genre, you know, and that's a thing too. The action comedy genre. So like Nobody, you know,
Right.
Nobody, John Wick, like, I mean, it's like cookie cutter. John Wick literally like in 2, I think it's 2, he's fighting a guy on a staircase and the shot's like probably like with a 150 or 200, like far away, and you can tell. And so, I mean, obviously what's going to happen? They roll down the stairs, and then the shot zooms out, and then there's another staircase, and they're fighting, and then they roll down the stairs, and then it zooms out again, and they're fighting, and they roll down the stairs. I mean, it's like that stuff. It's
purposely
like
comedy.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. But it's like that is the shot. It's a one shot. It's shot from really, really far away with like a telescope lens, you know, and so it's like it's really well done.
Yeah.
So maybe the filmmakers that want to do funny stuff are just shifting to multiple genre type projects.
Yeah.
And in that case, all we're left with is Tag or Blockers or
Yeah.
Long Shot, you know.
Yeah.
And it could be studio
Hall
decisions
pass.
as well.
That's true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It could be a studio decision where it's like they don't want to spend money on something that's not safe. And the list down there at the bottom is safe.
Yeah.
They're doing nothing different or interesting.
Yeah.
They're just doing broad comedy.
And that's the thing is, like, I guess when I put on the outline, I put terrible ones. It's like, I mean, I've seen those, and, because I wouldn't put them if I didn't. And it's like, they're not terrible, but you walk out and you're like, yep.
Yeah.
So it's like, I never thought about any of them ever again, until this episode. It's like, what comedies have I seen recently in a theater? Like, just comedies. And I was like, I mean, they're tapioca. They're vanilla. I mean, they're so...
Yeah. And when we get into kind of the comedy movies that we have affection for, you'll see, like, there's something else about all of them that is interesting, But, so, another thought I had is, like, do we feel that comedy works naturally better on television? Because the stuff that I quote all the time and we quote all the time from comedies is usually something from television, usually The Office, or I quote Arrested Development or Community or something. I think there's something to be said for that comedy television shows have a longer staying power than some movies. And in my opinion, I think it's because we get to spend longer amounts of time with the characters. Yeah. So you can build up jokes on what we know about these people, whereas in 2 hours, you don't have time to do that.
If you set up something in Act 1.
Yeah, it's just gags the whole time. Yeah. So what are your guys' general feelings on that? Do you think one has an advantage over the other, or is just different?
I think purely from like a technical standpoint, I think that it works better at home or on television just because you don't need a giant screen to watch a comedy. You don't need the highest quality sound system. You don't need, I mean, that's not what those things are made for. They don't, you don't, need, I don't know. It's so much more relaxed, I think, than other movie watching experiences. So I think technically, because you don't need it, I think that means that it probably works better on your television. Because you're more comfortable. When you're comfortable, that's when you laugh, right? That's when people they're loose and you're comfortable at home. So it's like, I think it probably is more beneficial for the art form at home. And like you're saying, I mean, serialization has really, really opened up a new area for comedies to really like grow, and then the jokes become exponential. They joke on each other and on them. This joke from season 1 or whatever, So I agree. I think it's not to say that it can't work in a theater. It absolutely can. A 2.5 hour long comedy can work. It's a lot harder.
Yeah. The thing about the quotability and stuff is interesting because I wouldn't have thought about that. But my initial reaction to that comment is then that's accessibility in my mind. I can watch Pretzel Day 6 times in the time it would take me to watch Blockers. Yeah. And so it's like I'm just more ingrained. That's more ingrained in me. And that's why most of the movies that, because you said mostly that we're quoting as TV shows. Yeah, the movies that I'm thinking, the comedies that we're quoting are old. Yeah. The movies, movie comedies, movies that we're quoting are old. Because they're also more, we just had so much more time to live with them. Yeah. And, like Dumb and Dumber, Napoleon Dynamite, in the
Hot Rod,
in the church crowd, freaking Nacho Libre. Yeah, I mean, that
for sure.
It's ingrained in Midwest church culture if you're our age. Because
for sure.
That's what you watched at the lock-in
you
or
won't
whatever.
Get an older one than Holy Grail, and we quote that all
exactly,
the time.
Holy Grail. And so, and it's sort of, I think, in my opinion, the end of that in terms of our life cycle would be like Superbad or Hangover or, Walk Hard and stuff like that.
Step Brothers.
Step Brothers. So I think it's because we've had time to watch those so much. And that's why in television you can just, this cold open is hilarious. And it's funny because it's in season 6 and we know that Jim and Dwight have the blah, blah, or whatever, it's like,
I feel like when
it's an investment. You know,
I feel like when people talk about the things in comedy movies now, quote unquote, that are funny, it's almost a discussion of like, oh, dude, this thing happens and it's so crazy, it's hilarious. That's what those comedies feel like. Is just the most outrageous possible thing, and
Instead
that's
of a joke.
Instead of a joke, it's something insane.
Yeah,
and I think that started with The Hangover, because that's kind of what The Hangover is built on. Is just like the craziest
massive
stuff.
situational humor, for sure. Yeah,
and then their reactions to the crazy thing that's happening. You know, and I guess for me, that's just never been what I find to be funny.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. And I think your point is great. Like, with television shows, we just have so long with them. And we've got, 9 seasons of The Office.
Some of us do. Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice.
Well, you guys.
Burned him.
7 seasons.
Check your watch.
We have been recording for 30 minutes.
It's going to be a short one.
Anyways, so it's kind of a hard thing to land on a definitive answer. I think so much of it is subjective, like Peyton was saying. But there is some great television comedy stuff, and stuff that's pure comedy. I think that's another caveat. Is like the comedy television shows are pure comedy for the most part. Like even The Office does have character stuff in it, but it's not really a drama. Like it's the goal is just to make you laugh all the way through, Yeah,
and I think a lot of people that my brother, for instance, that didn't get into it when it started is because it was hot off the heels of the sitcom comedy and it wasn't funny enough. It wasn't joke gag enough because they didn't know, and I'm not saying that we knew before, but it's just like it was such a learning curve.
It's not a live studio audience comedy, which is just
and at
joke,
the time, that's what it was.
Yeah.
So I think that the thing about, I guess that's, I don't know how to put it, but I guess that's what my response to that would be is like, at the time, it was so antithetical. And so, and you have Arrested Development like that now, and, but the more you watch them, the more ingrained it is.
Yeah. Yeah, because we didn't really talk at all about, with the television shows, that change that happened between live studio audience comedies, which are, I think all of us would say, not our favorite version of television comedies. They're broad, just as many people as we can get to laugh at this joke, that's what we want to do, not what do we think is funny.
I think a lot of that, and this is cut me off, director, if this is a rabbit hole, but a lot of that is, in my opinion, is you had 4 time slots on
network stuff,
5 TV channels, and it has to be a hit, and as many people that think it's funny is the best way for our TV show to get on television. And now it's like, if 300,000 people think your thing is hilarious, that's probably enough to get a start.
Yep.
Yeah.
Pretty
Whereas
easy to
before,
find
it's
them
like
too.
You need 6 million viewers a night on Tuesday afternoons or whatever.
Well, you look at Arrested Development.
Exactly.
Had 3 seasons, really not great ratings, but it won awards that kept it on the air, but it never got the ratings until after it was canceled and people found it online.
Freaks and Geeks.
And and it's just small groups of people like fervently love the thing.
Yeah, and that's easier to do now with the internet, I guess is what I'm saying. So comedy back then had to be cookie cutter.
Right.
Because you had to make as many people laugh as you could, because there were 4... You're going to go home and watch 4 TV shows, and that's all you could watch.
Well, and like you look at like the finale of Seinfeld or whatever, or just Seinfeld in general, there was like, millions of people watching it, like in the tens of millions of people watching it, as opposed to now, like a 3 million person viewing of a network show is really good.
Yeah.
So it's just radically changed. But so enough dumping on movies for now and television shows and comedy. Let's talk about some comedy stuff that we actually enjoy, because there is a lot out there that we do like. It's just kind of mixed in with other stuff. So Jake, do you want to talk about a couple?
Yeah, I mean, the classics that what is your favorite comedy? People ask or whatever. I guess it sounds like people ask me all the time, like, Jake, what's your favorite comedy? That doesn't happen.
And it's like, I always say the same thing.
So, but now it's great because now I can just direct all those people. Hey, check out this podcast, not for you, episode 66. It'll answer all your questions. But yeah, Hot Rod. I really, really think Walk Hard, the story of Dewey Cox, is hilarious. The songs are so good in it, and funny. And then Dumb and Dumber, I think, is a classic.
Yeah.
I'm a huge fan of Super Troopers. I think it's really funny.
What's so interesting is Super Troopers is in your good stuff. Super Troopers 2 is in your terrible stuff.
And Dumb 2.
And Dumb and Dumber 2.
So I think those are the 4 funniest ones that I always go back to. And like I said, I'd include The Big Short, stuff like that. But it's like they're funny, but I don't feel like they're a comedy. It's just, it wouldn't be fair, I think. But
yeah. Well, for mine, I've also got Hot Rod.
Of course.
I've got Monty Python and the Holy Grail, which I think is just the funniest movie I've ever seen.
Definitely came out before 2000.
Yeah. Life Aquatic with Steve Zissou.
Maybe came out before 2000.
Yeah. No. Death of Stalin, which came out pretty recently.
Death of Stalin happened before 2000.
It did. The Big Lebowski came out before 2000. And then the Corneto trilogy, also known as Shaun of the Dead, Hot Fuzz, and At World's End, or The World's End. I always forget which one's the Pirates of the Caribbean movie and which one is the the Simon Pegg movie.
I think the Pirates one is At World's End.
Okay, I think this is The World's End. But that's Simon Pegg and Edgar Wright's trilogy of movies. But in all of those, there's something different going on. Like in the Edgar Wright ones, it's genre parody almost. Big Lebowski's a Coen Brothers movie. There's no other way to describe it. Death of Stalin is doing a very interesting perspective on a historical thing that actually happened. Life Aquatic is Wes Anderson. Monty Python is very specific and British. And then Hot Rod's a weird one too. And Hot Rod is like the next generation of that SNL movie, but those never became a thing like they did in previous generations, you know? Anyways, Peyton, what were some of your favorites?
When people ask you,
when people
on
ask
the
you on
street,
the street,
constantly
see you
me,
walking.
I usually say, see episode 66, and then see Jake Bennett's answers, and then you'll see mine. I again, Hot Rod is in mine as well. I think it's probably tied with Holy Grail. I think Holy Grail they're the opposites. Like they're, if you're in a certain comedic mood, one is perfect, and then the other one is the other catch-all.
Yeah.
I think those two are the best two comedies. I would throw in, I have a strange affection for Scott Pilgrim versus the World. I think that one is really special to me.
Again, doing something different. It's got a video game thing in it. Yeah.
I'd put Napoleon Dynamite in the top 5.
You can't get away from it in our generation. Like it was so.
Yep.
I think Curtis burned it for me. And
Curtis Ware?
Yeah, and so
Curtis, that was made after 2000. I'm sorry.
Oh yeah, I think he gave us a copy of it, and he was like, "Hey, this is like a new movie that people are like raving about or whatever." When we watched it,
but it was made after 2000.
That's true. Dang it.
The last one I would say, and I know it's just been overseen and overplayed, but Anchorman is just, it is top 5 for sure. I mean, it is such a good movie.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, it just got
overdone.
Yeah, it got burned.
The one thing I was going to say about Napoleon Dynamite that's so weird is that is maybe the most specific comedy I've ever seen in terms of that sense of humor is so strange and off the wall.
Yeah.
But it captured something that our entire generation connected to.
I think that's what Hot Rod is. I think Hot Rod didn't define the humor of our, especially male generation, but I think, like, it didn't push our comedy that way. It was embodying the comedy that we already had. I think, like, it's not like we were. I think that's why we thought it was so funny at the time. Is just, it got us. You know what I mean?
See, that's what I'm saying about Napoleon Dynamite is like, it didn't. I shouldn't have said it captured something. I meant in the sense that it captured something in our brains that we connected to.
Yeah.
Not that because they didn't capture anything realistic that we joke about. It was so strange, but it was so popular, and I don't know why. I can't figure out how that movie should have faded off into obscurity and no one ever saw it. But anyways, sorry, director going on a tangent.
No, I think, that's interesting because I do think the weird thing about it is I think it's a well-made movie, too. But it's like, how many of those do we never see? I guess they made it for $20 or something crazy like that, right? So
in like Idaho,
So I don't know. It's that's interesting about what makes it, because the antithesis of that is Hot Rod. It's like you have star power, you have SNL guys that are at the top of their game, and even that there were 4 people in the movie theater when I went and saw it with Mateus. It was like, but that's so geared towards us too, because it's like, especially us. I mean, like us, because it's like these guys, and he wants to do something cool, and his brother films it,
but they're kind of nerdy,
and his brother films it for him, and he's like, man, I think if enough people see this, they'll think it's cool, and it's like. That was very much like what we were doing at the time, you know, not necessarily like stunts, but.
And it also mixes in some absurdist stuff that doesn't make any sense. Yeah. And I think that's exactly where my sense of humor is. If a movie can kind of throw something in out of nowhere that doesn't logically make any sense, but it's funny, like whenever the riot happens, like it doesn't make any sense that this would be happening. And then like all of a sudden Rico has a TV in his arms. I think
just that have to run and hope that you're not hurt.
I think that and Napoleon Dynamite. Maybe there's something about a comedy that comes along and then is something that people haven't seen before in comedy, because like there's not really another comedy like Napoleon Dynamite before it. And then, but afterwards,
Juno came out before Napoleon Dynamite, did it not?
I don't know.
I
don't feel like they're similar.
I would say that it didn't, but maybe.
No, you're right. It's Michael Cera. He wouldn't have been that age in
2004. Yeah, he would have still been on Arrested Development.
Yeah, he would have still been young.
Weirdly enough, they sell the Napoleon Dynamite and Juno double feature Blu-ray pack.
Weird.
It's the same director.
Oh, is it really?
Yeah.
What?
Oh, okay.
No, it's not. Juno was directed by, I think, Jason Reitman.
Jason Reitman.
And Napoleon Dynamite is...
It's the same guy that did Nacho.
Yeah.
Jared Hess.
Yeah.
Napoleon came out 3 years before.
Okay. Well, that's less... Yeah, okay.
Anyways, let's talk about some recent comedy stuff that we have seen that we've liked. You've got a list up here. It kind of embodies a couple of the ones that I've seen. I would say Death of Stalin falls into that for me. It was 3 or 4 years ago, I think now. Licorice Pizza just came out this year, last year. Paul Thomas Anderson movie, and it's a comedy. It's it's fine.
Is it?
It's still going. But Licorice Pizza, it's a movie set in the 70s. It's kind of a romantic comedy, but it's pretty much just a comedy.
Right.
But again, there's something different going on. Jake, do you want to talk about some of the other ones here on your list?
Yeah, I would say the most surprising one that I had seen recently when I read the outline that came to mind was Free Guy, for sure.
I watched that recently.
I saw it twice, and it was way better than I was even thinking. Like, I know it was sort of made for people like us, like video games and, but I don't like Ryan Reynolds.
You got it.
Right.
How do you not know one of the biggest stars?
Ryan Gosling, Ryan Reynolds. Okay. I mean, but I never, very rarely think he's funny. At this point, 7 years ago when he was doing the same shtick, I thought it was hilarious. But, so I thought it was great. I thought it was really funny. It had a lot of heart as well, which I was not anticipating. So that one was the one that jumps out the most. Another one, Nobody, with Bob Odenkirk, which I just recently, Pete just told me last week, Nobody saved Bob Odenkirk's life because when he had that heart attack on the set of Better Call Saul, he actually lost his heartbeat, and they beeped him 3 times, which usually if you have to get beeped 3 times, you're gone. And the tech said if you weren't in such great shape, because he lost 2 of his arteries or the cavities in your heart. There's 4 of them or whatever. 2 of them stopped pumping blood. Yeah, and he's like, if you weren't in such great shape, So anyway, interesting thing about Nobody, but Nobody was really good. The Fatman,
so funny.
Oh my gosh,
yeah.
JoJo Rabbit, Lady Bird. I enjoy Superbad and The Hangover. I thought Guardians 1 was a really good comedy. I thought Ragnarok was a really good comedy, and I am a closet fan of 21 Jump Street. I think it's hilarious. I think I like Channing Tatum, especially in a comedy role. I mean,
he was pretty funny in Free Guy.
I think he's really funny. So, and then Jonah Hill, when he's like well written for a comedy role, is great. Yeah. So,
and the other one I was going to add was Spider-Man No Way Home.
Yeah, it's a great comedy.
Really funny. Yeah. Not a good movie, but really, really funny.
Hilarious. So,
Peyton?
Recent ones.
Yeah. Recent to me...
The Batman?
Was...
hilarious movie.
The Batman.
He was laughing at how much other people liked it.
You have the Nice Guys on your list?
I do. That's the one I was going to say. Thanks. You want to...
I didn't think you'd seen it.
Oh, I've seen it.
No, it's The Other Guys.
Oh, gosh.
No, it's The Other Guys.
I even got confused by the bit. We were...
Right. Do you...
No.
You take it.
Yeah, The Nice Guys is really the one. And then the ones that you guys already said, JoJo Rabbit, Death of Stalin. I think... I'm trying to think of another one that was in the theater that we watched.
I mean, we saw Tag.
We did see Tag. He's not up there.
No.
Moonfall's a great comedy.
That's true. That's true.
No,
You're part of the moon now.
Okay. Dude, best joke of the movie at the very end. Worth the wait. Yeah, no, I think Nice Guys, again, it has something really unique about it. It's super, it's like the Rockford Files, only it's, updated and a little bit more pathetic.
Yeah, it's the Lethal Weapon. I mean, Shane Black started that buddy cop type of movie, and he's done it a couple times, but I think Nice Guys is one of the best versions of it.
Yeah. To me, the one that jumps out is Licorice Pizza. I mean, I haven't laughed that hard at a comedy probably in the last 5 or 6 years, something like that.
Really funny. Yeah. And again, nobody in the theater laughing.
So weird. Word on the street, if you are listening in the area, word on the street is Regal's bringing back a lot of the nominees next weekend and the weekend after and the weekend after. So for the rest of March, if you want to see Licorice Pizza, I think that they will have it. So it's
worth it. It's amazing.
And you can see the Haim music video. See the new Haim music video.
True.
Because I've seen it.
It is finally on YouTube.
Oh.
Sadly.
It's sadly on YouTube.
You saw it before anybody else.
I did see it, yeah.
And you
me and one other guy that was on his phone the whole time.
Yeah.
I guess he didn't see it, so never mind.
So let's talk real quick about some television show comedies that we personally love. The ones I had were Arrested Development, It's Always Sunny, and I Think You Should Leave, which was a sketch comedy show that Tim Robinson is doing on Netflix. Really funny. And then one that we've all watched, you kind of told us about, was Ted Lasso. Again, a dramedy. Though. There's some very serious stuff, especially in season 2.
It's gone.
But what are some other shows that you guys are big fans of?
We're going through Community right now.
Yep.
And I would say I'm enjoying it way more than I remember enjoying it the first time I watched it. Which
pretty great.
Might spawn a rewatch of Arrested Development for me. Because I've never done it. I mean, when I was still in high school and you had just left and went to Springfield, that's when I watched it the first time. So I mean, it's been that long since I've seen it.
Wow.
So that obviously, I mean, The Office is, that's my favorite TV show of all time. And then I have seen all of Brooklyn Nine-Nine. I wouldn't say that it was like amazing.
It started off better than it ended, for sure.
And It's just hard. It's hard to do comedy that good for that long. And
Yeah.
I mean, I just anyway. So, but I have seen it all, and I've watched a couple of them twice, or 3 times. So I thought it'd be mentionable.
I don't know if you mentioned. I think It's Always Sunny is worth mentioning. I think that's an impressive run. I mean, they've had some weaker seasons, but some of the most recent ones have been hilarious. So it's like, I mean, I think they're on 16 or something.
They either just finished 15 or 16. I can't remember which.
Yeah, I mean, they've been going forever, and
it's crazy.
It's hilarious.
And they're doing a podcast now about each episode, and it's really funny.
Charlie is, right?
All 3 of them.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
It's fine. They're not really talking about the episodes.
No,
but
it's just them interacting, which is funny.
Yeah. I Think You Should Leave is, I think, the funniest thing out there. Unfortunately, it's very short.
Yeah.
There's not much there, but
the episodes literally are very short. There's there's episodes that are like 15 minutes long.
Yeah. But I think Tim Robinson and
have you seen it?
I watched the first one.
Not a fan?
What is his partner's name? His writing partner?
I don't remember.
Steve Carell.
Yeah. How about Space Force? No.
But they're hilarious. They're in more and more stuff now. It's like Werewolves at Night. That guy that's in that.
Oh, yeah, I know who you're talking about.
He's in the After
Party. He was in Detroit with Tim Robinson as well. Yeah.
Anyway, those guys are hilarious, I think. So I would just say those 2 are worth mentioning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's a hard topic to really come down on in terms of what's going on because, like you said, comedy is super subjective.
Right. I agree. Hilarious, man. Wes.
Ending on that joke. Dude. My name is Wes.
Boink, boink. Dude, I've got your nose. Okay.
What's my name? What's my name, guys?
Dude, it's so funny when you forget your name.
We're done.